As a game developer, one of the biggest challenges I face is coming up with new features to add to my game, and I kind of suck at it. So I'm gonna ask ChatGPT for 3 different ideas that'll go into my game to really see how scared we should be. So let's get started. So I knew I wanted to start off with something simple, so I asked it to give me a unique weapon that we could add into my action-adventure RPG, and I was hoping it would give me something more unique than just a pokey stick that does damage. And disappoint, it did not. Having a sword that dynamically changes based on if there's any enemies in proximity and causes a special effect is pretty unique. To start getting this in, I'm gonna need a model.
Oh shit. Here we go again.
So after a little bit, this is kind of what I ended up with. So getting this into Unity, it's time to get it to glow around enemies. So to do this, I split it up into some parts that I wanted it to glow, created a custom shader that gave it this crystal look, added a slider to adjust how intense the colors are, and with that all, we already have a pretty good base to work off of. To get it to glow around the enemies, it was as simple as doing some distance checks and basing the intensity off that value. Now to follow the answer ChatGPT gave to us to weaken the enemy, I decided to go the route of applying a weakness debuff to the enemies. This shouldn't be too hard because after all, I already made a similar system a few years ago, so how bad could it be?
3 days later. 12 seconds later. 3:28 a.m. 3 weeks later.
I finally got something. So what I didn't realize going into this was to apply a weakness effect, we would actually have to apply it somewhere. Wow, just big brains over here. I didn't want to just affect the weapon stat directly, so I had to redo the entire stats handler to accommodate a new character stat. Now, if this was the only issue, it would be fine, but no. So what I also failed to realize was that I completely overhauled how weapons are networked in my game. Now you might ask why this is important. Well, it breaks absolutely everything. Before, the server actually had a reference to the current instance of each weapon a player would hold for all the players, but that caused this. So I went in the back end and I simply changed the weapons to be client-sided so each client would have an instance of their own weapon that wouldn't really communicate with the server. So when I went to apply the buff from the client to the server, it was like walking up to a random person and telling him an inside joke only you and your friends know, then telling him to go and tell everybody else they knew. This would make them think you're insane, and that's basically what the server would do. So to get around this, I had to implement a server buff manager that gets instantiated on the server side along the weapon whenever it's equipped. This would kind of be like an interpreter between the client and the server. So the client would say, I hit X, give X the debuff with the ID of Y, and the server side of the object would be like, yo, I know what X is. All right, I'll give it debuff Y. Now, is this secure? Absolutely not. Do I really care? No. Now, what fun is it to have a new weapon if you can't smack around a new enemy that could counter everything we just worked on? Oh, ChatGPT, I'm gonna need you to create a unique enemy that will counter the weapon you just gave me.
12 seconds later.
Oh wow, this actually might just work. The first thing that popped into my head was basically that Mega Chad dude you always see, but like green and with a staff, but then I realized the only thing I suck more than coming up with ideas is modeling them, so that's just not gonna work. So then I was like, wait, I have a perfectly unused orc model that gives those mystic vibes already, so let's just delete that quiver and boom, orc warlock, am I right? Now I know this isn't exactly what's described, but like, come on, we just can't do that. With that, we need to get this into the game and reduce the effectiveness of the orc bane against it and other nearby orcs. And I'm like, you know what would reduce the effectiveness? A force field. Thank you. I'll take the trophy now. So without any hesitation, I googled how to make a force field shader, and about 45 minutes later we came up with this. Now my idea for this would be that if an orc was nearby, then it would have a chance to cast a force field around them to protect them from not only the orc bane, but from any weapon in general. This would kind of force you to prioritize the orc warlock instead of other enemies. But before we get into all that implementation, what I needed first was some sort of long, curved, cylindrical object to cast spells out of. Wait, no, I meant a staff. I meant a staff, guys. Then I went back and I finished up the force field buff that gives the character invincibility and spawns this effect. Tying this all together, this is what the warlock orc acts like, but something is just missing. Oh, wait. If there's no enemies around the orc, there's no point in casting a force field buff, so I'm gonna need to create some sort of an attack. What I ended up creating was a pretty basic arcane projectile that deals damage on impact and making it so that the warlock would randomly decide on which ability to cast depending on the chance and if there was any allies nearby. With those two new features, I'm gonna be honest, ChatGPT is kind of 2 for 0. To be fair, these aren't insanely unique ideas, but the fact that all I had to do was type some words, you know, I'll give it to him. But now this is where the test actually starts. I wanted to ask for a unique feature that I could add into my game and make it tell me exactly how to implement it. So after asking you for a new feature, this is what we ended up getting, a very original morale system. I was kind of expecting like a 50-foot dragon that just eats the player or some magic powers, but let's just see how ChatGPT thinks we should go ahead and implement this. Okay, so basically it just wants us to have a integer that gets changed around and that would affect certain actions that the AI can take. You know, I didn't expect much, maybe, you know, like the Shadow of Mordor source code, but, you know, it did give us a good template to start off with, so, you know, let's not bash it just yet. What I'm thinking is that for every enemy that faints due to the player, it would reduce the confidence or morale of surrounding enemies, and after a certain point, they would just kind of scatter. And after getting that all implemented, it's kind of nice because it kind of gives the AI this sense of, you know, decision making and strategy, which could make the game more interesting, but I feel like there's only one way to test out these 3 features, and I think you guys know where this is going.
My join button doesn't work.
What?
Yeah, nothing's happening when they click join.
Tom, you want to hit them? Like,
I'm trying, it doesn't do anything.
I think the colliders would have worked, to be honest. They seem to be working with the 10. Oh my god, someone is not having a good time.
I'm in again.
Nathan, are you good?
Right. We do
My
have
computer
colliders now, which
crashes
is really
every
nice.
time I try joining.
Because I asked ChatGPT and it told me to make a sword that glows around enemies and gives them a weakness debuff.
So it literally plagiarized Lord of the Rings.
I wouldn't
Okay,
say
wait, the game
plagiarized, I would
crashed
say
again.
borrowed ideas. Oh yeah, I forgot that the actual bow and arrow system works. That's crazy. Never mind, it doesn't. My bad, I spoke too soon.
Does it look like I'm on the end of a bat?
Yes, it does.
Like I was literally like, oh, I'm in, and then my computer just shuts off.